On the morning of July 1st, 1863, the Battle of Gettysburg was already underway on the west side of town. And as the battle was raging back and forth between the Union and the Confederates on that side of town, a guy by the name of Oliver Otis Howard, who was the commander of the 11th Corps, rode ahead of his corps, along with a colonel by the name of Meisenberg, and they came up to this hill that I'm standing at right now to do a reconnaissance. Howard, as he was looking out, said to the colonel, "This seems like a good position, Colonel." And Colonel Meisenberg replied, "This is the only good position, General. I am at Cemetery Hill, and it is this place right here that served as the keystone for the Union Army during the Battle of Gettysburg." So every once in a while, you run across somebody that whenever you hear them speak, you think, how in the heck do they keep all of that information inside their head? And that's how I feel every time I see this guy right here. This is Garry Adelman. If you have looked up anything about the Civil War on YouTube, you probably already know who he is. He is the chief historian with the American Battlefield Trust. We're here on East Cemetery Hill. I know a little bit. He knows way more. So we're going to kind of lean on his expertise here.
So here we are on East Cemetery Hill, and man, I have a lot to tell you. But before we get into this East Cemetery Hill is part of Cemetery Hill, of course, and this is the main Union position at Gettysburg. But on the first day, and you can actually see some of the first day's battlefield from over here, north and west of town, about 30,000 Southerners, just less than half of Confederate General Robert E. Lee's army, arrives in Gettysburg and wraps around about 20,000 Union soldiers. The Union soldiers retreat back through town to Cemetery Hill. So this immediately becomes an important position, and this guy right here, Oliver Otis Howard, recognizes the import of this hill. Should you have to fall back, I'm going to leave some troops, I'm going to leave some cannons back here. For that, he will receive the thanks of Congress later, because he sort of made sure Cemetery Hill was held. Now, while the Union troops marched back through the town, you could say marched or retreated back through town, they were happily greeted, and this is not any sort of a false legend or anything. Truly, they were greeted by, I think, my favorite general, a guy named Winfield Scott Hancock, and I'm going to come over in front of the camera over here so maybe you can see him behind there. He wanted his statue, if they were to erect one, put here, because here he is calming the troops. Winfield Scott Hancock, who always had a pressed, clean, boiled white shirt, even on a battlefield. He was that guy that could arrive on a battlefield and give orders, even if he wasn't in uniform. People would listen to him. We've all met people like that before. And here he is on his, if I may, in case JD wants to take the camera up closer, on his anatomically correct horse, a male horse, steadying the troops as they arrived on East Cemetery Hill. And together, Howard, Hancock, and others really started to lay out the Union line. So on July 2nd, 1863, the Union line will be in the shape of a fishhook, and we're right here, okay? The line is going to curve over to Culp's Hill over in that direction, and it's going to curve around this hill over to places you've heard of, Cemetery Ridge and Little Round Top, sort of in the shape of a fishhook here. And we're going to be talking about fighting that's really going to take place here on July 2nd, 1863.
So what we're looking at here is one of the Union artillery positions here on Cemetery Hill. Now you can see the earth mounded up in front of this cannon, and it's all over here on Cemetery Hill. These were called lunettes. Okay, so they're kind of like in a half moon shape. And whenever you get up here on Cemetery Hill, well, you can really start to understand why Howard picked this spot to set up his headquarters and why it was so important to the Army of the Potomac during the 3 days of the Battle of Gettysburg, because you can see everything up here. We're looking to the east approximately right now. You can see, there's just clear fields of fire and clear views from there. If it weren't for all of these trees, and if we got up a little bit closer to the edge of the hill, there would have been a commanding view of the town of Gettysburg. So this right here was the keystone for the Union Army during the three-day battle.
So the famous fights at Gettysburg had already taken place. Little Round Top, the Wheat Field, Devil's Den, the Peach Orchard, and a few others were already really winding down. In other words, on the far side of the fishhook, the fighting was winding down. And it was a huge attack, and many people probably were starting to think the fighting's over for the day when, in twilight, the Confederates launched their attack on these sections of the line, specifically against here on East Cemetery Hill and over on the next hill over Culp's Hill, okay? These are going to take place in the twilight and in the dark. Pretty odd for the Civil War. It's hard to fight in the dark. Their tactics really did not work too well in the dark, but sometimes they did it guided by the muzzle flashes of the enemy. In any case, here it is, the Confederates, Early's division over here, a division, in his case, he's going to attack with 2 brigades, maybe with 1 in reserve, and Johnson's division with 2 or 3 brigades also attacking Culp's Hill will launch this attack. It is intense, and it is going to be in part successful for 2 reasons. One, the Union soldiers who are defending East Cemetery Hill over there, imagine them at the bottom of the hill off over there with cannons up top here, and imagine them not in those woods there, but beyond those woods at the next stone wall. The Union soldiers of the 11th Corps had already fought the day before, been driven off of Barlow's Knoll and the plains north of Gettysburg, and they are fewer in number. A lot of them had been captured, and you are talking about sometimes like a skirmish line with the soldiers 3, 4, 5, 6 feet apart. So when the Confederates launch their attack, they come in from town, Louisianians in this direction, and they punch right through the Union line over there. While that is happening, the North Carolinians are executing a very difficult maneuver, a wheel, where they're trying to, in those fields out there, with the regiment on the farthest end sprinting, and the one over here kind of just pivoting, and they're all trying to wheel into position. It works. It's getting dark. The Union soldiers at the base of the hill sometimes didn't see the Confederates coming until they were 10, 20 feet away. So the Southerners were right on them, and they start to punch holes up and up into the Union line and move up this hill. In the meantime, the Louisianians over here have captured the first stone wall. They captured the stone wall that's at the edge of the woods over there. They capture the 5 cannons over there. They capture this stone wall here. They continue to move around here. This is disaster for the Union. Ultimately, the Union is going to lose 9 cannons during this, and the Southerners have captured basically the crest of the key position at Gettysburg. But this guy, Winfield Scott Hancock, whom I already talked about, was over on a different part of the battlefield. This is a different day when he was than when he was active on East Cemetery Hill. He is on a different part of the battlefield. He hears from the sounds that things might not be going well for the Union, okay? And he sends 2 brigades over, and that's the second reason, okay? The Union is weak over here, but the Union has the interior lines of the fishhook. Sometimes I miss my fishhook and can't find where it is, and they can shift troops back and forth pretty easily, okay? So they have 2 brigades to spare. He sends 2 brigades, and what do you know? They follow the sounds of the fighting and end up here right where they're needed to be. Pennsylvania, West Virginia, other troops show up here, and the cannoneers are trying to fight off the Confederates with hand spikes and whatever sidearms they have. There is an intense fight up here right as the Union reinforcements arrive. And where are the Confederate reinforcements? Where is that other brigade? Well, it never really materializes. Some Georgians were supposed to follow, but they were already out of sight and out of mind. By the time the Union soldiers repulsed the Confederates, it was too late for them to advance, and that's the story of the Battle of Gettysburg. Wherever the Southerners had some success, the Union end up putting superior reinforcements in, and the Southerners can't do a whole lot. They fall back from here, another opportunity lost.
I've moved now to the bottom of East Cemetery Hill, and what we're looking at here, we're looking off to the east, and these are the positions that the Louisiana Tigers under Hayes and the Tar Heels from North Carolina under Averys would have moved through. And the Union 11th Corps line would have been right along this road right here. Now, they had pretty much been decimated on the first day of the battle at places like Barlow's Knoll, so they weren't able to concentrate their fire. They were all spread out, which made it very difficult to defend this line against the Confederates who were charging the field. And whenever the Confederates got here, I want to show you this from the Confederate position. Look at how imposing East Cemetery Hill looks. And this is the terrain that they are going to have to overcome in order to take this Union position, and they almost did it. As a matter of fact, they did do it, but just couldn't hold it. Pretty crazy. So as Gary was just talking about, the evening of July 2nd, you have, Hayes and the Louisiana Tigers, and then Avery and the North Carolina Tar Heels making this assault here on East Cemetery Hill. And the North Carolina troops were going to take what was called a right wheel maneuver. And somewhere in there, their commander, a guy by the name of Avery, ends up getting hit in the lower part of his neck on the right side. It was dark. There's all kinds of smoke covering the battlefield, so it's really hard to tell, like when it happened. Nobody really knew until later on. Now, if you know anything about the Civil War and ballistics and things they use, so they're shooting these mini balls. Now, again, this is not as advanced as our weaponry today, but one thing with this is it has mass. So whenever it hits you, you're going to feel like you've been hit by a train. And even if you don't get hit like in the spine, the concussion is going to potentially like deactivate your central nervous system. Well, that's what happens to Avery. He loses the use of his right arm. He can't speak, and they find him on the battlefield, and he's still alive. He gets out a pencil and a piece of paper, and with his left hand, he writes out a note that says, "Tell my father that I died facing the enemy." And Avery would die a short time later. All right, well, that was a little bit here at East Cemetery Hill. If you ever come to Gettysburg, definitely come to this place, because you're going to be able to see like some of these well-preserved artillery positions. You're going to see these magnificent views and get a little piece of the battle that has kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit in recent years. And until you can get here yourself, or if you can't, then I highly recommend going to the YouTube channel of the American Battlefield Trust. Just an absolute wellspring of resources there, things that you can learn that you may have not ever known happened here at Gettysburg. But as for now, we're going to head on to a different part of the battlefield.